welcome to Church Coffee, Christianity, Conservatism, and Culture. I'm one of your hosts, Walter.
And I'm Rob, and today we have...
Mitra and Robbie.
Thank you. We're having trouble pronouncing that. Mitra's an old high school friend of mine. We've kept in touch throughout the years. She's an Afghan-American, and we're just going to talk to her a little bit about fall of Kabul and her background of being a year since the Taliban retook Afghanistan, and we just wanted to get her perspective on that.
So before we begin, Mitra, what is your favorite type of coffee or hot beverage?
Well, Rob won't be surprised, but you'll be surprised. My favorite coffee is Shenandoah Joe's. Even when I moved out of Charlottesville, I go back just so I could get my beans and make my espresso every morning.
Wait, what is this called?
Shenandoah Joe's.
It's a local roaster in Charlottesville.
Will you send me a pack of those beans?
They're good.
Sweet. Awesome.
The owner flies like all over the world to like locally source the coffee.
All right. Well, as long as he's wearing like a Nirvana shirt and looks grungy, it's all game.
He's not.
Thank you for sponsoring our podcast. So
he does.
Wait, he's your sponsor?
He's one of our sponsors. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. All right. So obviously with the intro, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about your story and how it connects to Afghanistan. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on your podcast, guys. But yeah, I'm happy to give you my background. Rob knows some of it, but this will be a first time for him too. So I was born in Kabul, Afghanistan. And my family and I lived all over Afghanistan due to my dad's job. So I lived in Afghanistan during the first regime of the Taliban. When the Taliban were slowly taking over Afghanistan, we reached a point where Afghanistan wasn't safe for my family anymore. So we fled to Islamabad, Pakistan. There, my mom and my siblings, I think, applied to the UNHCR for resettlement. And back then, the resettlement process was super fast. By super fast, I mean 9 months. So within 9 months of living in Islamabad, we heard from the UN that, our family has been accepted to resettle to the US. So there was some conflicts within our own family, for safety reasons. So it was only my mom and I that moved to Charlottesville, Virginia in 1999. When we got to Charlottesville, there was the International Rescue Committee. They were just starting up, and I think we might have been like the first 10, 15 families that they helped resettle. It was interesting, for us having just moved from a completely different culture over to the US. My mom and I both didn't speak English. So it was difficult. That, with the IRC being new, they were still kind of learning how to assist families that they were resettling. And then for me, it was difficult because when I moved to Charlottesville, I started in elementary school. The elementary school that I went through, they weren't equipped to handle kids.
Like ESL, English second language, right?
Yeah, English second language. There was actually 3 kids in the ESL class. It was one Hispanic kid, one Bosnian kid, and then there was me. So the teacher was not equipped to, I don't think she was equipped to handle students with English being as their second language.
Right.
So it was interesting. I think I went through a year of that, and then they had to kind of push me into regular courses and kind of let me fend for myself. Yeah, that was pretty interesting. So I think part of me being a determined little kid, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be always taken as a student that's an ESL student and all that stuff. So I like pushed myself and I was like, no, I have to be in the honors courses and everything. So kind of struggled through elementary school, middle school, but then when I hit high school, I was, in all honors classes. That was by my own choice and like pushing my parents in the school to give me what I wanted.
Right, right.
And so, I mean, like I was in those courses, but I was still struggling because the foundation that should have been built wasn't really built for me.
Right.
Like I had to concentrate on learning the language rather than concentrating on learning, all the other items. So, it was fine. I survived. I made it to college. But yeah, that was kind of, yeah. So there was that. It was
So real quick, you came here when you were in what? Would that have been fourth grade, fifth grade?
fifth grade.
Fifth
They
grade.
put me in fifth grade, though. Technically, I think I should have been fourth grade, whatever.
Hey,
And you said your dad, because the nature of his work moved around while you guys were in Afghanistan. What did he do? If you can,
So my dad by profession was a civil engineer. And I think at that point, he did work for the UN at the final parts of like when he was there.
Mhm.
He worked for the UN as a civil engineer. So I think that's why we moved around so much.
and you and your mom get in the States in 1999. When did the rest of your family immigrate?
So the rest of my family never, like my dad immigrated after the fall of the Taliban the first time around.
Okay.
Yeah, so he moved to the US in, I want to say 2002,
Okay.
but then the rest of my siblings never moved to the US.
So are they still in Islamabad or Afghanistan?
No, so most of my siblings are either in the UK or
Okay.
Canada.
Okay.
Yeah,
And where do you fall in line? How many siblings do you have? And where do you fall in line?
I'm the youngest
Out of
out of 5.
5. Okay. So how many? So you're the only one in the U.S. How many do you have in the U.K. and how many do you have in Canada?
So my eldest sister is by choice still in Afghanistan.
Okay.
My sister and my brother live in London, UK, and my one sister lives in Canada.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break and have a word from a sponsor. Moving can be extremely stressful, whether it's from the first floor to the basement, a block around the corner, or even out of state. At Monticello Moving Company, they are able to take that stress away and bring you to the exciting experience that moving has to offer. Monticello Moving Company is a full-service, one-stop shop when it comes to moving, packing, and or storing. Having grown up in the Charlottesville area, they are dedicated to the community and to their customers. They strongly believe in exceptional customer service and treating customers just like family. With that, they are proud to say that they are locally owned and operated to make sure they do not lose that family touch. Next time you need help moving, packing, or storing, give Monticello Moving Company a call at 434-409-5485. Again, that's 434-409-5485, or email them at monticellomovingco@gmail.com. More of their information is found in the show notes. Give them a call and join their family today. We are going to take a short break for a word from our sponsor. Today's sponsor is Cobb Technologies. Cobb Technologies is copiers and IT services local to Charlottesville, Virginia, and the #1 independent dealer in Virginia. Cobb relishes both new and existing clientele partnerships. Cobb also has a nonprofit arm which helps disadvantaged and hospitalized children. Contact local Cobb consultant Doug Woodside at 434-960-3000. Generally, then, since you've been in the States now for over 20 years, what's the feeling of being an Afghan-American?
So being an Afghan-American is being torn between 2 cultures and 2 countries.
Yeah.
When Afghanistan and Afghans hurt, I hurt. When the US is going through horrifying events, I hurt and I want to help resolve it. So it's And sometimes those two cultures are so different. So it's really being torn between which one do I side with and which one do I align with.
Man, yeah. And like in Christianity, there in the Christian mission field area, they have the kids who are called third culture kids, right? I'm sure you've heard of that, and maybe not. Okay, so third cultural kids, right? So what happens is, like, let's say missionaries from, typically it's like America or the West, whatever, go overseas or whatever, and their kids grow up in that culture. Like, for a kid could be parents may be from the US, but the kid grows up in China. I almost can speak Chinese. Like, one of these kids could rap in Chinese. That's how fluent his Chinese was. And I was like, and he was good too. But it's the idea that they're like, okay, I'm both American, but I really strongly identify with this country that I pretty much have grown up in. And so living in the tension of, yeah, I'm coming back to America, but also I miss my homeland and what they identify as their homeland. So anyways, that made me think when you were sharing being torn in between the two. I was like, oh, that's somewhat similar to a third culture kid.
Yeah. I mean, I see like the Afghan point of view, but I also see the American point of view.
Mhm.
I don't see the extreme point of views on either side, but I understand where, the motivation or the thought process kind of comes
Yeah.
from.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I got the next question. So we wanted to talk to you in conjunction of it being 1 year since Afghanistan fell, or fell back to the Taliban. Tell us about how it felt when when you saw them coming in, or right. I'm assuming you watched it on TV or streaming whatnot or whatever. What were you feeling emotionally? What as you saw that stuff happening? Yeah, I don't know. What was your perspective and how were you feeling?
I mean, one, it was hard to avoid because even if you try to hide from watching the news, you read
Mhm.
about it, or if you
Mhm.
don't even read about it, there's social media. And then if there's not social media, people that know that you're Afghan want to talk to you about it.
Right.
So of course it was really, I mean, especially having been through the first regime, like at least for like a small period, but having lived under those conditions, um, it was difficult because, just some people were saying, oh, they're not going to be the same regime that was in place back in like late 1990s.
Right.
But maybe I'm a pessimist. I didn't see it as that. I knew that women, I mean, 50% of the population would be asked to remain at home due
Right.
to their views. And I'm just thinking of it economics wise, like how can a country survive with 50% of the population not being
Home.
able to
Yeah.
be in the workforce?
Right.
And some families don't have, a male to go out and work. So I just knew that people were going to be in for Afghans were going to be in for a lot of hurt and struggle. And
Right.
and now the more I read and research, I realize, I mean, those, my pessimistic views unfortunately did come true.
Right.
So, it was difficult. There was a lot of, and there was my mom's side of the family. My dad's side of the family has, immigrated to mostly Canada, but my mom's family was still in Afghanistan, and it was a big concern for us, trying to get them out, trying to
Right.
get them to safety. So there was
Right.
a lot of, sleepless nights trying to ensure that they're safe, what's going on,
Yeah.
and making sure that people weren't going to the airport because, as I'm sure you guys remember those images, like, of course, they weren't taking part in that, but
Oh
even
yeah.
like with the ones that had visa, they couldn't make it to the airport because there was the Taliban surrounding the airport.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
So looking at look at again, if we need to not talk about it completely, totally understand. Right. The images and videos I remember, I can recall or whatnot. I'm like, this is a royal F up right now. Like the way, okay, please share with me what your perspectives are, or, do you blame Trump for the way it happened? Do you blame Biden? Do you just blame, just reality of the world is evil and we do stupid, anyways. Like, yeah, what were your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's just heartbreaking, first of all,
Okay.
knowing that these people are so desperate. As I mean, anyone would be for, seeking safety.
Right.
Like the state of that country had come to a point where people were desperate enough
Yeah.
to risk their lives to get on those planes
Yeah.
in the way that they did. So it hurts as a human to watch that. And then as an Afghan to watch those people suffer
Hmm.
the way they were.
Yeah.
And as far as blame, can you really blame the situation in Afghanistan, the 45 years of war that started back in like
80s.
like 70s,
Yeah. With the Russians.
late 70s?
Yeah.
Can you really like blame that on anyone? Because I mean, at first there was like the civil war between the anti-communist Islamic group against the Afghan communist government.
Okay.
And then that was backed up by the Soviet Union.
Okay.
Once the Soviets were out, then there was like coup after coup.
Mm.
And then to the point where we reached, the late 1990s when the Taliban spread and took over like parts of Afghanistan.
Right.
And then the US entered Afghanistan post 9/11 and
Right.
late 2001 until, August of 2022. I mean, sorry, 2021, 20 years. So the 45 years, can you really like put all the blame on one person's shoulder?
Yeah. No, you can't. Right. It's just the reality of, for instance, if you think about the state of America, like I think about like the state of the Black family, right? Some parts of it are going to be like, oh, great. Other parts are going to be like, oh, this family here is caught up in poverty. And is it this individual person's fault or where they're at? You're like, no, there's years of decisions, years of both self-imposed and indirectly imposed, or whatever you want to call it, life that has been put upon people. So can you really blame things? No, like for me personally, again, I have no connection to Afghanistan besides talking to you. Actually, that's not true. I think there's some Afghan refugees at my church. No, they're Pakistani. Never mind. Sorry, they're Christian Pakistanis who were being persecuted by, I think, the Hindu government there now.
Pakistan has
Not Pakistan.
Pakistan is Islamic country.
Oh, then that's what it was. Sorry, they were being persecuted by Islamic extremists over there. So I think anyways.
I mean, the Taliban have branched out to Pakistan as well. So.
Oh, okay. This was like 5 or 6 years ago. Sorry, I digress. My bad. I think it's just reality, right? Stuff happens. The way I looked at it, I was like, man, I definitely felt like Biden did not set people up. If we had people there who were supposed to be able to get visas to America, Afghan citizens, or people who worked with the U.S. military while they were there, I was like, oh wow, we really did not. It didn't seem like, at least the way the media portrayed it, social media portrayed it, it didn't seem like we gave them enough time to get their affairs in order, to be like, hey, we're pulling out. You need to get on this plane. Let's go.
I do agree with you. I do think.
And that was not a bait and switch question. That was just me.
No. I do agree with you. I think the U.S. leaving could have been more gradual. It was very sudden. I know they kept on talking about it. It's kind of like the same with student loans. It was like, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. And then they didn't, but then they didn't like now like Biden saying, okay, this is the last time. At least this time we're getting a little bit, like, okay, December is your deadline.
Yeah.
Whereas with Afghanistan, it was, it was a lot more sudden. I think it could have been handled better. I do think so.
Right.
But then again, I do not have those, decisions to make, nor do I know what all goes into it. So
Yeah. I have not been in those rooms whatsoever. So I don't get those. That's above my pay grade. But either way,
we're going to take a quick break and have a word from a sponsor. Shenandoah Coffee Roasters has been a staple of Charlottesville since 1993. They offer over 25 varieties of specialty, boutique, and gourmet coffee using only the finest Arabia coffee from all over the world. Coffee is their passion, and they painstakingly search out the best coffee available. Nothing is taken for granted as they continually strive to provide the best coffee they possibly can. They roast all their coffees to order based on the needs of their espresso bar, ensuring that only the freshest and highest quality coffee leaves their roasting house. Grab a cup at any of their 3 locations, Main Restaurant Preston, On the Corner, or on Ivy Road, or order a bag online at shenandoahjoe.com.
Well, let me ask this question off the top of my head. What is your, and maybe we can come back to this or whatever. What is your hope for your country of birth or your home country? Like what is your hope for that, and what would be your vision for it? What would a thriving Afghanistan look like in your mind?
Again, the pessimist in me is striking in, and it's like I'm starting to lose hope that Afghanistan will ever stand on its own again. I mean, my dream for Afghanistan is for it to go back to its golden era of 1930s to early 1970s.
Okay.
The era that my mom and my dad talked about, where, women got an education, worked in society. I mean, there are articles and there are pictures that if you search Afghanistan in the 1970s, articles called Afghanistan the Paris of Central Asia. And there are pictures that you compare with the West, there isn't much of a difference.
Yeah.
So what is my hope? That's my hope for Afghanistan. A future where women are a part of society rather than hidden or shunned. Do I think that's going to happen? I can hope.
Right. Yeah. I was looking at some of the Afghan pictures from the 1970s or 1970s.
Yep.
I'm sure there's I could ask.
Hopefully they're the right ones.
Yeah, I'm assuming so. Maybe you can send us an email and be like, "Hey, here you go. This is what."
It's basically like women dressed as you would see someone in the 1970s going to school,
Right. Okay. Then yeah, these are them. So
there's no scarf, there's no women covered, hidden.
Right. Oh, man. Rob, I'll pass it to you, my friend.
Generally, how would you encourage the average American to help Afghans, either ones that have immigrated like yourself here to the States or the ones still in Afghanistan? You seem to especially have a heart for the women that are under the regime. How, in general, how can someone help?
I mean, do your research, inform yourself, and donate to reputable charities that have connections to Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
But then for those in the country, like for Afghans in the US, there's organizations like the International Rescue Committee that need volunteers, that need donations to help resettle those families. And then just when you see the new Afghans that have immigrated within at least the past 5 years and less, be understanding that these people have gone through so much trauma.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to cope.
Yeah.
Not only that they moved from a war-torn country,
Right.
but they've also moved to a country that is completely foreign to them.
Mm-hmm.
They will have language barriers. They are trying to cope with the cultural differences and trying to still survive. They're still in survival mode. So just go in with that mindset.
Let me ask you this question, because so my daughter goes probably to one of the most diverse schools, at least in the school district in which we live. Our neighborhood it's a damn good split. You have white folks, you have black folks, you have Middle Eastern, you have North African, West, East African, no South African, but you have Asian, South Asian, there is not one majority ethnic group at the school, which is crazy. Now, I would say there's majority in terms of the religious groups. There's going to be majority Christian and majority Muslim. But the thing that me and my wife always think about, right? We're Christian, so like I love to share about Jesus. I try to, whenever I'm not being a pansy, I try to. It's always one of those things where we're like, okay, well, what does it mean just to care for people? Right. Dallas, I forgot how many Afghan refugees or just refugees Dallas got in general. There are some organizations I know that are working with refugees, but all that to be said is, what does it look like to care for refugees and or refugee kids? What is it like? How do you care well for people who have gone through trauma, specifically the type of trauma of coming from a war-torn country or just being uprooted from their home country? Lord knows what they go through during the process, but what does it mean to care well, not from I think at the very base level, it is because you're a human being and because you're worth dignity, honor, and respect. What does it mean to care for? What does it mean to care well? Does that make sense?
It does, and it is. I don't know if I have the right answer other than just think of okay. Anytime I'm out of my depth and like someone I approach, I try to think of their background and what they're potentially going through,
right,
and how I would want to be treated. So imagine yourself in a foreign country. What would you need? What assistance could the people in that country give to you in order for you to be set up for success or to survive? If not set up for success, but at least
survive at the very beginning. Yeah, I think about that. I think some of the things are obviously. I think people will want to have friends, but Americans will be like, hey, come on, at least in Texas, like, come on over for dinner. Well, we're gonna cook you something real good today. Or like I imagine we can come off very friendly, welcoming, potentially somewhat shallow. I don't know.
Actually, what you're describing, so Afghans are very hospitality oriented. Yep. Like you in Afghanistan or even here, you may go to like someone who's like the poorest of the poor,
right,
to their house. They will bring you anything they have to serve you.
Right.
They may starve later, but they'll make sure that their guest is taken care of.
Yeah.
So if you are willing to be friends and befriend them and be friendly, that goes a long way. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you a story. Not a good story, but really a situation that we went through. So when my mom and I first moved to Charlottesville, there was someone through the IRC. She was volunteering there. She stopped by and she was just so kind, always there for my mom, even though like there was a huge language barrier. She would do just she would try to take out my mom and I for ice cream, just to take us out, invite us over to her house. And to this day, we are family friends.
Mm-hmm.
I do not call her by her name, because like in Afghan culture, you call them
Auntie, uncle.
oh yes, and I
Yeah.
call her aunt, and I call her husband uncle, and her kids are much older than me, but I call them like, well, I call them by their name, but like I always refer to them as my cousins.
Right.
So I think the reason my family succeeded in resettling and I am where I am in life is because we were surrounded by good people in Charlottesville,
Mm.
like the family friend that I just told you about.
Right.
So if you want to take that time to invest and, and build a relationship with the people you're coming across from Afghanistan,
Right.
by all means do, because you will gain a super loyal friend,
Right.
but they will also benefit.
Yeah.
As cheesy as that sounds.
No, I mean, I think it's just reality, right? Like people, when you care for others, when you show a kind of, sacrificial love, or just the sense of, hey, I'm choosing to enter into this relationship and to care for someone, right? I used to work, so InterVarsity, the thing that we're using here, I used to work for them before I got into construction and became a heathen. Like we would have international students who would come, they're coming to America to study for, post-bac or whatever, right? And so for a whole semester, there's a group of guys I would take to the grocery store and be like, all right, come on, we're going to the grocery store this weekend. And one of the things that first catches you off guard is I'm looking for fresh chicken. Well, it's about as fresh chicken you're gonna get here. And they're like, no. And then a good friend of mine, she was a colleague too. She's like, no, Walter, they want the chicken alive and they want to get it killed, right? I was like, ooh, yeah, we don't. So me and last story I'll share, then we'll jump back to the questions. Tala and I, we hosted a family. The husband's from China, the wife was from Thailand. This is, and they're like, oh, we're going to cook for you. And in my mind, I already knew what that means, right? Like in America, I have a level of sanitation. I've been to other countries, eaten in other countries where I'm like, whatever, like I'm in someone else's house. I don't get to bring kind of my arrogance to that person's house. But it was very sweet. They cooked very delicious food, but they got fresh chicken. And I mean, when he was cooking it, I was like, cool. And then when he was cleaning it, he would take his chicken hands and rub it on a paper towel and be like, okay, start touching houses. I was like, Lord have mercy. Anyways, random story. I forgot where I was going with that, so I apologize. Or just like doing relationship, right? It's just about, hey, you're having a relationship with people, you're caring for people, they're caring for you. And it's, yeah, in my mind, I was going to ask, like, how do you work with people to make sure they're not going to get taken advantage of? Because there are people here who will take advantage of people who are being resettled or coming here and they don't know nothing, right? Like, it's just like, how do you, and that's the importance of building a relationship with people. Anyways, I'm off my soapbox.
Honestly, I would not have an answer to that question, because I'm sure the situation can happen on either side.
To that end, I think we only really have one more question for you, and that is, what are some resources you might recommend? You said make sure to do your research. Is there any sort of resources you recommend, or people, podcasts, or books, or anything like that you would recommend that would, if someone was looking to perhaps help an immigrant here in this country, that might help them more understand Afghan culture and general of the history?
I mean, my first answer is going to be talk to the person, learn about their culture. That's going to be your best source, because it's going to help you build a relationship by learning about them. And you can, of course, do your own research later on. Google is pretty good about giving you sources. But well, I mean, if you want just facts, I would say stay away from media. I mean, news, like by media, I'm talking about news.
Yeah, CNN, the Fox News, all those those folks.
The ones that like tend to talk about like the crisis rather than the norm of
Right.
what's going on in that country. And then of course, like the International Rescue Committee, they have their website. They have a lot of, facts and figures and everything that can kind of help you. There's also Human Rights Watch. They are, they have a lot of videos, articles, things like that. But really look for like the unbiased organizations out there that are really just wanting to inform people. So, but yeah, again, your best source is going to be the person you are directly in front of. And the thing is, the one thing I've always like, anytime someone wants to get to know me or something about my culture, they always ask this. I think it's mostly Americans that ask this question. Are you offended if I ask this? No, I'm never offended. I'm offended if you make an assumption.
Yep.
But if you tell me, hey, I've heard this, is this accurate? That is perfectly fine. Asking questions is never going to offend people. Assuming things might, but so.
Yeah.
Well, I think with that's a good little place to stop. Mitra, thanks so much for coming on and giving us your story and some helpful tips. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we close out?
Nope. Thank you so much, guys, for having me. Hopefully this wasn't completely boring.
Yep.
I think it was great. All right. We'll see you all next time. Our album art was done by my wife, and our theme music was composed by TJ Stokes.